I've often wondered what the American dream is even about and what a big deal it is in people's heads. And of course, different people have different versions of it in their heads. For my father, it meant having a stable job, being able to afford a home, a car, and of course, education for his daughter. And my mother, on the other hand, oh, she despised the American dream. She found it absurd that a concept like that could even exist in the imaginations of people. And my mother certainly didn't live the American dream. Well, like she had to pay the cost of it. You know how these little things they keep accumulating day by day and it keeps adding to your daily frustration. So brick by brick you build this wall. And then this wall in turn becomes your facade to show everyone that you're so happy and that you're so grateful of being given the chance to make your life in another country. I think perhaps that's what happened to my mother. Brick by brick she built this facade to show everyone that she was so grateful. While on the inside, the part of her that kept pining for home, now that was being chipped away too, bit by bit. I remember the endless ways in which my mother would rebel against the American manners. This woman would insist on having a washing stone. And when our neighbors, they complained about noise pollution caused by the clothes being slapped against the stone, my mother would wash her clothes with even more effort, making sure that her vengeance was registered with a loud spatter of clothes against the stone. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't just her who did the rebelling. Well, I rebelled too. Against my mother for trying to make me more Indian. Now, come on, who even wants that? Being Indian just makes you stand out more. And if I had actually listened to my mother and gone to school with oiled hair or something, trust me, it would take no less than 5 seconds for that bitch Cindy Chapman to yell across the hall, "Hey, look at it! This is the Indian kid with the oily hair." This one time, I asked my mother to not pack chapati and curry anymore for lunch. I told her I wanted mac and cheese, something that didn't have the strong smell of spices in it. But could you even blame me for feeling that way? Why does your food smell so much all the time? Do you eat curry for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Why is your food so yellow? Now, I know what you're thinking, like it's just food, so get over it. Believe me, I did. Things like these kept eating at my mother, bit by bit. Sometimes I like to think about what she felt like when she came here for the first time. Oh, by here, I mean New Jersey. This woman tried so hard. So this one night, she invites her neighbors home for dinner. So the wife, Peggy, she gets sick at the sight of my father carving the fat off the mutton. I mean, no surprises there. What did you expect? These Americans have sensitive stomachs, right? So my mother tries salvaging the situation by giving Peggy some water that was boiled in some cumin seeds. Now, this is a specialty of all Kerala households. It's no big deal. And Peggy did get better after that. Good for her. But soon after that, the Peggy who initially viewed us with kind condescension, she soon became the Peggy who was too friendly to the point of making us suspicious. Oh, you should have seen it. She kept nagging my mother for all these herbal remedies and yoga and naan bread. Can't blame her. Perhaps for her, these were the chief identity markers for Indians, I guess. But you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the time when my American classmates used to ask me, "Why is your food so yellow?" But now, all of a sudden, it's all about, "Oh my god, turmeric is so good for like your skin and your system, and it's like a really, really good cleanse. If you got a cold, that's alright, just have a turmeric latte." It just becomes more acceptable, more fashionable when they do it, right? The first major change that my mother tried resisting were her clothes. So she took a while to get used to wearing all the browns, blacks, beiges, whites, and all the neutral tones that the Americans love to include in their workplace attire. Every time she wore a colorful kurta, she said she felt out of place. People were staring at her as though as though she was a freak. Well, to be fair, in my eyes, amidst all those muted tones, she did kind of look like she stepped right out of the circus. Another moment that broke her was when I casually started calling her mom instead of Amma. It wasn't intentional. You see, it started small amidst my friends' circle. You see, when all of my friends are complaining about their respective mothers, I can't just butt in and say, yeah, I know my Amma really needs to chill. So I started referring to her as mom in front of them. And then I called her mom at home. And I remember that her face, it just sank. We had a minor argument about it and I left it at that. Well, I had no idea how much it meant to her. In fact, I had no idea that she was getting bothered by so many things. She was getting bothered by the fact that she was getting used to making American food for her daughter's lunchbox. She was increasingly getting concerned about the typical American teenager that I was, in her words, effortlessly turning into. Listen to this. This one easily takes a cake. During the weekends, when I would step outside for a run, my mother would ask me to at least consider wearing a pottu. Like a pottu with my running gear. Are you kidding me? I just rolled my eyes and took off. There were so many everyday ways in which she felt, in which she was made to feel like an outsider. And at the same time, I was desperately trying to not be one. Signing up for ballet classes when my mother desperately wanted me to continue my Bharatanatyam. Begging for sleepovers. Initially, she resisted. But then, she caved in. Hoping that I would be less of an outsider. But no matter how hard we tried, we were always going to be those Indian people at the end of the block. So the tipping point of my rebellion came when I wanted to go for prom. Obviously, she was incredibly appalled. I cried so much that night. But in the end, I did get my wish. But then she agreed to let me go on the condition that she gets to pick me up after prom gets over. Well, to be fair, she had relented to so much, including to my date picking me up. So I thought, this was no big deal. I might as well let her have this small thing to herself. I was really happy that evening. I wore this sleeveless gown with a lovely silhouette and, while my mother agreed that I looked quite beautiful and all of that, she was very concerned about how it accentuated my figure. Even to this day, I like to think about what she felt like, driving up to 3rd Avenue and turning around the corner to my school. She would have passed by the thrift store and the McDonald's that I frequented with my friends. She would have seen all those silly banners and those decorations that proclaimed proudly Pennington High School prom night. Obviously, it goes without saying, she would have made a snide remark in her head about how all these Americans just celebrate the most stupid things. I had asked her to wait for me in the parking lot instead of coming up to the gymnasium so that she wouldn't embarrass me in front of my friends. I could see how angry she was when she saw my date hug me to say goodnight. Of course, later that night, I would be questioned about whether this boy tried touching me in other ways. I was taking my own sweet time, telling my goodbyes to all of my friends. And she got a little impatient. She stepped out of the car and then she walked towards me. I wish I'd asked her to wear like a hoodie and jeans instead of that kurta and that bindi that was always there on her forehead, no matter the place or the occasion. It just felt really weird explaining to all these white kids what this bindi was all about. Not to mention how out of place she looked amidst all those kids in gowns and tuxedos. But whatever happened after that happened really quickly. 2 guys in in hoodies, I think. They stepped out of the bushes and one of them shot her thrice. And the other, he pointed his gun at the crowd so that we wouldn't intervene. She received 3 bullets, one to her abdomen, the second to her chest, and the third went right through that bindi on her forehead. So the next thing I know, I'm standing in a police station answering a cop's questions, and the whole time I'm wearing the gown that was drenched in my mother's blood. Well, I was told that the attackers were called dot busters, the ones who had killed my mother. If I see a Hindu and the setting is right, I will hit him or her. We plan some of our most extreme attacks by looking up Indian surnames on the phone book. Have you seen how many of them there are? Do you even live in Jersey City? Do you just walk down Central Avenue and experience what it's like to be near them? Well, we have. And we just don't want it anymore. You said that they'll have to start protecting themselves because the police cannot always be there. They are a weak race, mentally and physically. And they will be stopped. That's what they've written on their manifesto. That's what they think about us. In the report that came out in the Jersey Journal the next day, you know what they said? They said that the woman who was shot was of Indian origin and was probably targeted because of the cosmetic dot or bindi, something that Indian women usually wear on their foreheads, out of tradition. I mean, I'm sorry. A cosmetic dot was one of the few things that my mother refused to let go of when she came here for the first time. This dot. It helped her to stay rooted to her home back in Kerala. This dot gave her so much composure whenever she felt like the world around her was changing too much. And now I see all these young white girls wearing bindis and putting pictures of themselves up on Instagram, making a statement out of it. But of course, I have no clue about what it feels like to be that Indian family at the end of the block. I gave up Bharatnatyam completely after that. I gave up ballet too. Come to think of it, I don't think I've danced since that night. But I've never stopped wearing this.